Hi, and welcome to the first episode of my StreamerBot overview. Today we'll cover the basics of StreamerBot and setting it up. Further episodes in the series will go into different areas in more depth, so be sure to subscribe to my channel for more StreamerBot content that's upcoming. So StreamerBot, it's by far the best way to supercharge your stream, to improve interactions and to allow for ways to engage your audience like never before. So how does it do this? Firstly, it will connect to your streaming platforms, currently Twitch, YouTube, Trovo and Kick. It then connects to your stream apps, currently OBS, Streamlabs, Meld Studio and Polypop. Then there's extensive built-in functionality for things like playing sounds, connecting to things and getting information across the internet or your network, storing information. Might be a count of how many times a user has done something. There's logic flow. There's work with keyboard from both detecting and sending keys. There's controlling SpeakerBot, so that's text to speech. And there's also custom scripting with C#. Now, please note you don't need to know coding to take advantage of this. Now, part of the reason you don't need to take advantage of this yourself is there's a community of lots of creations. And so it can be even added on to with this. Check mine out on my webpage, vrflag.com, or YouTube channel. Particularly the fast track that has over 50 parts as a great starter pack for StreamerBot. And even if you don't use those, it's a really good way to understand how to create things and how things have come together. Please note there's new versions of my videos and imports are going to also be improved as well. Also, please note that my creations are always free, like the majority of those out there. There's also amazing amount of integrations from StreamerBot that connect to lots of other services. So it could be things from donations, treats or purchases, or even reacting to your heart rate. It's worthwhile noting the StreamerBot website integration, which enables things like the excellent StreamerBot decks, which allow you to control StreamerBot from a web page or mobile device. And not just yourself, your mods can also do this without needing a connection to your machines. So let's show you how to install StreamerBot. Getting hold of StreamerBot is as easy as going to streamer.bot. Like with all software, be sure you're getting it from a trusted source, and the only source to install StreamerBot for the first time should be streamer.bot, and on the homepage there'll be a link to download it on the left hand side, and you'll just download it from there. StreamerBot is a portable application. That means there isn't an installation process that you go through. You need to decide where on your machine you want to store it. Now, this could be somewhere in your hard drive, like Stream Stuff, or OneDrive or G Drive. Once you've decided where you want to put it, find the downloaded file, open it up. I would suggest we create a folder. So streamer.bot. And then we can select all. I use Control A and just drag it over to streamer.bot. When that's copied over, that's StreamerBot installed for you. Now, if you're using my fast track package, the next step would be to copy the data folder across here. We're not going to do that today. And if you want to use the fast track, I would suggest you use the web pages on vrflag.com specifically for that, or my YouTube videos on the fast track on my YouTube channel. Now we're ready to start StreamerBot for the first time. For this, we just need to locate streamer.bot and double click. You can right click, pin it to start if you want to. When you open StreamerBot, it should automatically check for an update. Now, if you're in the alpha, which is like an initial testing phase, or beta channels, which is a widespread testing stage, then you will need to make sure that you log on. You can do this by going to the bottom left-hand corner, clicking Login. On previous versions, you'll need to log on through the Integrations tab and then StreamerBot website. You can then access the check with the equivalent of the menu at the top and check for updates. And you can see here on StreamerBot 1 that it's prompting you to just log in to be able to access different channels. You can only see stable here. And I recommend, if you are going to do testing, to create another instance of StreamerBot. To do this, go to your StreamerBot folder, simply copy and paste, and call it something like beta or alpha. You can do sort of previous version of StreamerBot. Then you can start up within that, and then you can tell it to update to the alpha. That means if anything goes wrong, you don't have problems going back. If you're going from 0.2.8 to version 1, you will not be able to go back. There will be backup files you can recover from, but you can't go from a big update like that to just changing the version of StreamerBot, because there are significant updates. To access the beta builds, you can get this through the StreamerBot Discord, and you can go sign up there for free and pick the role. For Alpha Channel, this is for bronze tier supporters, so this is through the Patreon for Nate. So it's patreon.com/Nate1280. We'll talk about the other benefits of this later. And Patreon will show you in your local currency, it's not always fixed to pounds. Now let's go through a tour of StreamerBot before setting it up. There is a menu at the top. In previous versions, it used to look like the standard burger menu there. That allows you to do things like check for updates, go to support Nate on Patreon or Ko-fi, open the log folder, so if you have issues, you might find that people ask for your logs. That's where to find them. Documentation and suggestions, which will open up the relevant web pages as well. Imports and exports, we'll talk about in a bit. They're also up here. There is a save button to save the configuration of StreamerBot. You've got a chat which gets chat from all the connected platforms that you stream on. You got an event feed, so for example, subscriptions would show on there, and global variables will show the status of items that you can set to values in StreamerBot. On the left hand side, you've got this button here on the left, which will allow you to minimize the menu on the left hand side to get the most of StreamerBot if you're creating things, for example. But we'll leave it open for now. So viewers, this is going to show you which viewers that are in your streams or streams. So if you're on multiple platforms, it will show multiple viewers. It will show different information. If you're a large streamer and have a lot of viewers, you may want to disable this in settings because it does take a little bit of load. Most people, it's not going to be a problem, but for larger streamers, you may find there's an issue there. Actions and queues. So actions are the actual work that StreamerBot does. Each action will have a queue associated, or the default queue. So if you want only certain actions to happen one at a time, you can configure that. And we'll go through that a bit later when we're setting up an example action. We have multiple panes in actions. You'll have the list of the actions, triggers, which are ways that you can, by the name says, trigger an action. And then sub-actions are an actual work an action does. Next up, queues. Just one by default. Pending actions are actions that are still running. So if you're having problems like performance or memory usage from StreamerBot, you may find actions aren't exiting. This is going to help you pinpoint which actions are continually running. You'll have action history. So again, if something isn't working, you'll be able to see which actions have run to make sure they've been triggered. You can also look at what they've been triggered with. So for example, it's a Twitch chat message, you can see which chat messages there are. If they're variables, you can look at the state of the variables here as well, both when the action has been triggered and at the end of the action. Next up, we have commands. Now these are a list of chat commands that you can use on multiple platforms. Now, a lot of the user interfaces in StreamerBot rely on right click. So we're going to actually show you the dialog when we go to create a new command. So right clicking and selecting add, it's going to give us a new command. The name is just for us. Again, the group is just for us. So if you want groups of commands, you can maybe have Twitch commands separate to YouTube, for example, or different types of commands. It really is up to you. The command itself here is going to be what's triggering it. And you can do the location where it's the start of a message or somewhere in the middle or a specific exact message. So it has to match exactly or anywhere. There is a way to use regular expressions or regex as they're known. That's a lot more complicated, and I'd suggest if you want to look at that kind of thing to look at the reference on the StreamerBot website. Under options, you can do things like ignore bot accounts. So you have multiple accounts for Twitch or YouTube. You can tell it to ignore messages from those accounts. You can do counters. So you can count the number of times a command has been run for everyone, which is the persist counter, or just users, persist per user counter. You've got cooldowns. So a command can't be used by the same user in a certain number of seconds or by anyone after it's been triggered for a certain number of seconds as well. You also have sources. You can see there's a lot of different options here. So you've got Twitch messages, Twitch whispers, bot whispers, resubscription messages, shared chat, YouTube, Kick, Trovo. So there's multiple ways to trigger a command. We also have permissions. So if you only want moderators, subscribers, VIPs, or people in a specific chat group that you've created yourself, you can either allow everyone, or if you leave it as is, everyone can run a command, or you can limit it down. Or you can tell it to deny everyone or only these people. So you have a lot of options in configuring your commands to only run by who you want them to be run by. So commands that do something more significant stream, like setting the game title, for example, on Twitch, you might want to have for yourself and your moderators. Next up, we have platforms. These are where you stream to. You have Twitch, YouTube, Trovo, and Kick. It's worthwhile noting, because Kick doesn't have as rich an API, work needs to be done by the StreamerBot's web services, and that comes at a cost. And that's why you need to be a Patreon supporter to be able to use that service. Under each platform's options, you'll have relevant settings. You'll all have options to connect to a broadcaster and a bot account. It's worthwhile noting, do not connect the same account to both of those. It should be separate. If you don't have a bot account, don't worry, you don't need to connect it. You've got things like platform only options like channel point rewards and polls, predictions. So they're Twitch only options. You can configure them here. You have things like emote handlers as well. So in YouTube, you have to agree to terms and conditions. You have options here, which are just YouTube, again, Trovo, and finally Kick. Next up, we have Stream Apps. So this is the software that you use to create your scenes and sources to be able to stream. Most people will be using OBS Studio, and this allows you to connect to your OBS Studio here, but you also have Streamlabs, Meld Studio, and Polypop options. Next up, we have integrations. It's going to minimize these other areas. This allows you to connect to multiple integrations. You can see a huge number here. And as they're added, you'll find additional integrations in here. This allows you to log on to the specific integration, and that will then enhance the functionality of StreamerBot for you. StreamerBot website, you can go to this one here. You can have shows you the instances. The way to connect to it is through the login, the bottom left-hand corner, which I'd highly recommend for everyone to do. We have services in StreamerBot. These are built-in functionality to allow for extra options to trigger actions. So you've got File and Folder Watcher, which will look for files or folders being created or modified, deleted, and they can then trigger an action. So if you don't have an integration with something specifically, you can still trigger things using these options. You have timers. This allows you to trigger events on a certain amount of time, but they have other options within that. So you can do things, it'll only happen if a certain number of lines on chat have actually occurred. So there's some really good functionality here. File tails, a bit similar to the file folder watcher, but only when sort of additions to a file has been created. You've got process watcher, which will allow you to look for new applications starting and triggering from there. We have credits, which allows you to record various events, and then you can access this data and to have a credit screen on your stream. Finally, we have quotes. So StreamBot has a built-in quote system. It's going to show you all the quotes here. It's worth noting on StreamBot 1, the way you access and interact with quotes is different, and so if you're upgraded, you will need to do some changes. And I'll do a video on that separately. StreamBot has MIDI support. So if you have MIDI devices, you can connect them. Both MIDI in and MIDI out can be used from that. We also have voice control. So this allows you to trigger actions by your voice. So Windows has built-in voice recognition, so you need to make sure that's set up on Windows, and then StreamBot can utilize triggers. So as you're streaming, for example, if you're a VR streamer, you don't have access to a keyboard, a mouse, or Stream Deck, you can then trigger actions just by your voice. Finally in this list, we have servers and clients. This is more advanced. I would highly recommend, however, enabling the WebSocket server. Not just enabling it, but also auto-starting. This will allow you to have extensions written by people like myself to connect to StreamBots to have even more functionality available. The settings section has an array of different options here. Most of them you won't need to use. General settings. Now the key things in here are picking your audio output device, whilst sound output sub-actions, you can pick the device. It's always good to have the right default. So if you have multiple output devices for your audio routing, this is probably the best place to pick it. If you're a big streamer, there's some performance options, but most people won't need to disable those, so the viewers tab in action history. Other settings that are of note, backups. You can change a backup folder. You might want to change this to be a folder that is then backed up by OneDrive or Google Drive. If you're a Patreon supporter, then you have access to the cloud backups. This is a great benefit to know that your backups for StreamBot are going to be secure and there in case the worst happens. There are many other settings, like changing user interface or any decisions you've made in the user interface. You can go back here to revert those as well. The other thing that might be useful is groups. So you can have different user groups, so you can set those up here. But apart from that, most people won't need to use this area that much. And on to the last part of the tour is connection status. On top right hand corner, we'll see here the connected platforms, streams, apps, and integrations just by clicking down. Now there's none connected at the moment, but when we go to connect it, I'll highlight this. You'll also, next to each one, have an arrow which will take you to the relevant setting as well. So if it's not connecting, you can go to the relevant settings area within StreamBot for it. So now that you've had the tour, let's go ahead and set this new instance of StreamBot up. The first thing, I'm going to connect to the StreamBot website with the login button at the bottom. Once you authorize that, that's going to go back to StreamBot. and show us as logged in. And we can see at the top right hand corner here that StreamerBot is connected. Next up, we're going to connect to the platforms. In this instance, we're going to connect to Twitch and the broadcaster account. Again, we need to scroll down to authorize to give StreamerBot access, and then when we close that, we'll find after a short while it's now showing both the StreamerBot and Twitch connected. You could of course connect to YouTube, Trovo or Kick, as I support Nate through Patreon. Next up, we want to connect to OBS. So under Stream Apps, go to OBS Studio, right click and then Add. We're going to call it OBS. You can either make a password up here and type it in, or we can get the one from OBS and copy and paste it in here. So I'm going to put a password in here. I'm going to tell it to auto connect on startup and also to reconnect on disconnect. I'm going to make sure it's version 5 and click on OK. First time you add it, it's not going to automatically connect, and that's actually going to be okay, because we can go to OBS, go to Tools, WebSocket Server Settings, which should be in any up-to-date version of OBS. If not already enabled, enable the WebSocket server. We'll type in our password, and then if we click on Apply and say yes and OK. Alternatively, we can show connect information, copy the password from there and put it into StreamerBot. Now we can just simply right click and connect. And straight away we're showing it's connected. It's going to tell us details of the current scene we're on as well if we're streaming. Again, at the top right, we can see that StreamerBot, Twitch and now OBS are all connected. Now would be a good time to set up other integrations you may have. You might consider, actually, do I have anything that I can use? But actually a lot of people have Elgato equipment, so connecting your Stream Deck, Wavelink might be a good option at this point. It's worth noting, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get access to custom webhooks. This means that you can set up integrations that aren't normally available. So this is in addition to the backups, the Kick support, and increased limits on the decks, which we'll cover a bit later. Next, we're going to enable an important server, the WebSocket server. Going to make sure that's on auto start. Then we need to enable the authentication. You don't need to enforce this. So what StreamerBot needs, if you're sending messages through this, you need to have a password. So I'm going to put a password in here, and then I'm going to start server. We can then go to OBS, go to Docs, then Custom Browser Docs. We can add in chat. This is going to be https streamer.bot/feed/chat. Next one we're going to do is events. That's going to be the same. I'm going to type it all again. And we apply that. And those are going to be created. We can dock them where we want to. Over here. We need to then put our password in here. Connect automatically, connect. And we have the chat and events linked from StreamerBot. It's worth noting the URLs used here, as well as the instructions, are the StreamerBot documentation website, which is docs.streamer.bot. So we can search, type in chat, and we can look for the extra features StreamerBot chat at the bottom. This will take you to the guide, which will show you what to do with OBS. Got to put it down. So at the bottom, here we go. And it shows the URLs. You can simply copy and paste them from here, also with the instructions. Now let's look at creating our first action. So we can go to Actions and Queues, go to Actions, we right click, select Add, and then going to give it a name. It's got SP for now. If I wanted to have a group, so I can categorize actions under groups, I could type in a group name there. If there are other groups already been created, it would show me in the list by the drop down here. If we want the action to run in a non-default way, which is as soon as it's triggered, it will run, we can leave the queue as default. We could create a separate queue if we only wanted one action to run at the same time. So things like sounds or anything that interacts with video elements or something that might interrupt something else, we might want to have a queue which is then called a blocking queue. But we're going to leave it by default on this action. We're going to leave the other options by default. Generally, you don't need to change those. I'm going to click on OK. Now we have the current action selected here. If we have lots of actions and we need to find one, or we have a filter up top here as well. We have triggers, which is what's going to start the action, and the sub actions is the actual work that the action is going to do. So we're going to start off with the trigger. So you're going to right click, select Add, go into Core, then to Commands, and then Command Triggered. This means whenever the command that we've set up in a moment will run, it will then trigger this action. We then click on Create Command, and I call it !SP because that's the command they're going to use. Again, we have groups like the actions. I'm not going to use them. We can have cooldowns, so there's only a certain amount of time that people can run those commands. Options for counting it. Sources. Twitch message is the default because I've got Twitch connected. But we could use YouTube, Trello as well if we wanted to, for example, or Kick. It is time there. So we've got a command which is going to run. Anyone can run it, and it's going to open up a Twitch message. So I click on OK. That's going to automatically create the command in the command section for us, and it selects it for us as well. Now we know what the command's going to do, so I'm going to click on the question mark here. This is going to open up the StreamerBot documentation website. This is where it gets really great, the integration with the documentation to make it easier. We can then look at variables and Twitch user variables. So when an action is triggered by command, it's going to be triggered by a user of Twitch. This is going to tell us which variables we can use then within the action. So for example, user is a typical one, which is very good, which will take into consideration the case sensitive, so the uppercase and lowercase letters in the Twitch username. So that's what I want to use in this instance. So I know to use user, which is all lowercase. You'll always find the variable starting with a lowercase letter. The second word will then be uppercase. And this is a really good practice to use for your variables. If you want to know about it a bit more, it's called camel case. So now we know we want to use the user variable. Let's go back to StreamerBot. We can just select OK flat trigger. So we've got the command, trigger, and SB. Now the sub actions. So this is the actual work we're going to do. Again, right click, add. We're going to go to Twitch because we want to reply to that message that's been sent to us. And through chat, send message to channel. If you're not sure of what sub action to use, you can also search here. So we can type in chat, and then we can send a message to channel here. Or we can reply to the message even if you want to. Both will work much the same way. And this is a message that's going to be sent out. Now, we know that we said user. If we put a % either side, that's going to change where it says user to be the name of the person that sent the message. And I can type in the rest of the message I would like to send to chat now. So I want it to reply saying the user would like you to know that they love StreamerBot. And we click on OK. We've now set up our own first action with the trigger that does some work. And we can go and test that. So go to OBS, in the chat, !SB, and then it replies straight away. BR would like you to know that they love StreamerBot. Now we have everything set up, it's a good time to back up. To back up, go to the settings. The backup in clouds will take the StreamerBot name. So if you are running multiple instances, you may want to change the name here. So under settings, we have backups. The regular backups that go into the folder backup underneath where you've put StreamerBot. You can just click on backup now. That's going to create a backup there. StreamerBot will also back up every time it's started up. If you're a Patreon supporter, which is really worthwhile, we get the cloud backups. So we can give a backup name and set it to include authentication information. And we can click on backup. You can see here, it's got the date, time, the version, the name here, which comes from the general settings. To restore from a backup, if you're an existing instance and you need to go back in time because you've lost something by mistake, deleting something for example, I would suggest renaming the data folder. This means you can always recover this previous state before the backup if need be. You can then create a new folder called data. So that's now empty and ready to take the backup. In the backup, we'll see several versions here with dates and times. This is the one which we created. So we can copy everything from within the backup zip file and put it into the data folder. Then when we start up StreamerBot, it's going to have all the connections information, authentication information, actions, commands, and that's going to show us when we start up that we have all those in place. To restore from cloud backups is even easier. We go to settings, backups. We can select the backup we want to restore, right click and select restore. We can then tell it to download and then restore. It's then going to restart StreamerBot for us. Whilst doing a restore from a cloud backup, you may be prompted to authenticate to ensure that it's you that's recovering from the backup. You may find you need to log into the StreamerBot website again as well. If the worst has happened and you've lost everything on your machine, you've got a cloud backup, then we don't need to worry. We can just download StreamerBot. So this is a new download of StreamerBot I've extracted here. You can go into StreamerBot. Then we need to log into the StreamerBot website. Then we go to settings, backups. What we'll find here is this instance tab is not going to show anything. Because it's a new download of StreamerBot, it's going to have a new instance name. Backup's still there. under other instances. So there's two backups we have here. The StreamerBot Cloud backups will need you to unlock in this scenario. Clicking unlock will then prompt you to verify yourself. And once you've gone through the process, which is in your web browser, logging onto the StreamerBot website, you'll see this is now unlocked. We can then do a restore, which again, very similar to before. Download, restore, the StreamerBot will then restart. And again, we'll need to log back in to the StreamerBot website. We will find now that we're all reconnected and good to go again, all thanks to the StreamerBot Cloud backup. Now you've got things set up, you might be thinking, how do I get the really cool stuff into my stream? If you're a first-time user, do consider my fast track at vrflad.com/fasttrack. It's a great starter pack and it's currently getting updated to version 1. The previous version will import and will work, and the steps are in the web page, and there's also a YouTube guide. Again, that's going to be updated there too. My smaller content, so individual pieces, are available on my YouTube, so youtube.com/vrflad. But there's also content within the StreamerBot Discord, the StreamerBot Extensions website, and StreamerBot Extensions Discord. And there's lots of other great content creators that have various sources to get it from. Please be sure that you're getting the content from trusted sources. The features that StreamerBot has allows for people to potentially misuse this. So if you make sure you're getting the content from these trusted sources, then you can minimize the risk. So now let's go through and show how to import some content into StreamerBot. For today, I'm going to use my fireworks. This has got multiple steps in the video, so we're just going to show the importing into StreamerBot part. I've already set up the OBS parts here. So in my video description, you'll find there's a import code. Sometimes it might be there, you might need to triple click it to select, but typically nowadays I'm using URLs. So we can either open that in a new tab and I'll show you what it looks like, or we can save it as a file. So I'm going to save it to my downloads as fireworks.txt. So this is the format of a StreamerBot import. I know it doesn't look very easy to read, it's not meant to be. We can select all this and we can copy that into the clipboard. Going to StreamerBot, we can click the import button. There's two things we can do here. We can either go to our downloads and drag our fireworks into this to populate it. You can see that shows us what we're going to import. Alternatively, we can just paste the import string that we've copied, gets the same result. At this point, we can verify the names, things like that, and select import. Now it says here, the commands that are being imported will be set to disabled. So that means that by default, things you import will not be enabled. So now we've imported that, we can go to commands. We can see here the fireworks is red, is disabled. So to be able to use this command, we need to enable it. We can look at the actions that have been added. In this case, we're just going to be using the fireworks action, which is triggered by fireworks, and that's core commands. We can test it if you want to here, but we're going to do it from chat in a moment. We can modify the triggers by adding different triggers here if we want to. We'll look at that in a bit. So let's go to OBS and let's try out this command. And we can see here that StreamerBot in the chat is suggesting the command for us even. I can run this several times. And we can see fireworks are displayed. You get sounds as well. And last up, before we get into the troubleshooting side of this video, is the StreamerBot Decks. If you go to StreamerBot website, log on to it as yourself, you have an option for Decks. This is going to allow you to create a web page which you can interact with. This can also be shared with people like moderators in your stream. So you can have an enhanced version of interaction. So in this case, we want to make one for the fireworks. And we can make this so anyone can use this if you wanted to. For now, we're just going to have it so we can connect to the deck. So this is a page. You can specify how many columns and rows you want for the deck. I just want one action, so one big button. I think, there we go. And then we're going to have it just as one button, which will then trigger fireworks. So we're going to give it a name, fireworks. Then go into actions. I'm going to do fireworks. I'm going to save. This is set up a very, very simple version of the deck. So I'm just going to move this so we can have it alongside OBS. And we can see every time I click the button, fireworks work. It really is that simple. So finally, let's go through a few options for testing and troubleshooting. The first should be to look at the actions and queues. So the queues, you can see if there's any pending items. You can get more details on the pending actions in the pending actions option here. The action history is going to show us the actions that have run. Within this, we can see how long they've taken. So you might see it's taking a long time or short time. When they're queued, they started and completed. So you can see, for example, all of these are running quite quickly, typically within a second. What we can do also is we can right click on each of these actions and look at the variables when they're queued and when they're after run. So for SB, we can see which user has triggered this. So you can say it's come from Twitch. These details down here. This is going to allow us to understand how an action is run, and if you're setting variables within your action, you can see the state at the end of it as well. If there are timing issues with things overlapping, you might want to look at the queues. So fireworks, for example, that's run multiple times. That can only run one at a time because it's blocking. So you may need to consider changing a queue to be blocking, or creating a queue and moving actions into a queue to get them to run one by one. You can also get actions. You can look at testing triggers here. That's also another good way for testing to make sure, is the issue actually the action when it's triggered to run, or is it the trigger not triggering? Lastly, logging. In the general settings, you have a log option in the folder. On test versions, it's always going to be verbose, which is the most amount of logging. If you're running the normal release, it's worthwhile, if you're having problems, to enable verbose logging temporarily, running through the action and then looking at the log at the same time frame when your actions are running. A lot of creations from people will have logging in there, so you can actually see what's going on. And that wraps up the review of StreamerBot. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and enable notifications. The best way to support StreamerBot is to donate to Nate. This is easily done via patreon.com/Nate1280. He's also on Ko-fi if you'd like to donate there. If you want to keep up to date with my content, all my socials are VRFlad. You can download StreamerBot from streamer.bot. And if you need help with StreamerBot, please use the StreamerBot Discord. There is a great support section. For any issues with my content, please check the video description and comments. Alternatively, go to the StreamerBot Discord and mention my name in the title of a support post. The background music on my videos is by permission of the very talented Alan Fulmer. Please do check him out via his website. And finally, thank you all so much for your great support over the years, be that nice comments, subscribing, it really does mean a lot.